everyone.
Good evening, Martha.
Good evening, Martha.
We're just so glad everybody is here, and Nancy, thank you for coming so far.
Thank you for having me.
I just love it when Elvis sings, and he was singing "Nearer, My God, to Thee." And when I went with Marilyn up to Rocky Mountain National Park, it's way up there, and we were near God, and we could feel God up there. It was like he was reaching his hand down to us, and we were right there to touch it back. It was really up there. So we were plenty near. And so we're glad to be back down on lower ground, but this evening's all about becoming nearer to God. So hopefully everybody will find something that will raise our consciousness just a little bit. John has some information tonight for all of you that will be most helpful. And he also wants you to know that if you have a questions, there's so few people here tonight. If you've got some questions, we're going to have plenty of time. So just think about it and store your questions. He'll ask you for them, okay?
Okay.
All right, we'll do that.
All righty, and we'll see you before we go. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good evening.
Good evening, John.
And I am glad to see what a sunny day we had finally. It finally did change, and we can have a sunny evening too. Isn't that lovely?
Yes, it is.
And we are here to have a sunny heart besides, and joy and peace, and bring some more understanding and truth into our lives. And last time when we met, there was a lot of truth that was shared with people. I hope that didn't scare them off. Sometimes the truth is a little scary to get at first because it's foreign to what we're used to, and it doesn't sound familiar, and we have been so often conditioned by the society and churches and different institutions to stay closed from the truth and stay in our little box of protection, and where we feel safe in our fears. And when you open up that box and let the light of God in, some people can't always handle that. I hope we didn't offend anyone or scare anyone off, but eventually this truth will be made known to everybody, that our coming to earth was not about, there wasn't any religion till years, thousands of years later. We were here long before religion ever was a thought. So hopefully people will understand it's all about vibrations and energy. And when we are one with God, we are all one energy. And as we broke off our individuality and came down to this planet to experiment with our vibrational ability to learn how to manipulate energy, we got caught up in this density. And it was not a matter of sin, like so often has been told, but experience, just to refresh your memory from last time, an experience of joyfully having fun and not realizing that we got caught up in it in such a deep, dense way that it was hard and impossible in some cases to remember how to go back into spirit. If you are really coming from a place today, which the people here are, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, that explains it very carefully, in that our spirit was trapped in humanness, or third dimension. And I was wanting to tell you a little bit more about that tonight. Mac and Marilyn did a class where they talked about ascension, and I channeled some chapters they read, and Sananda, which you call Jesus, sometimes had chapters in Archangel Michael and other ascended masters, and we gave different ways of explaining how to go into ascension and releasing the third dimensions. And I have come up with a little tool for tonight that will be able to help release some of that density in our lives that some people might be having trouble just wondering, how am I going to change that one? And this will work for any difficult situation, negativity, thoughts, words, or actions that are not producing the results you want. So often we get caught up in habits that just it's so easy just to jump in and and do it that way because that's the way we've always done it, but it is not productive, and after a while the pain of doing it that way tells us it's got to be done differently. So hopefully this might be a little tool that when you're meditating you can apply it and help to release some of that denser, lower energy. It's important to know that it's a matter of mindset, and Casey was so right on when he said mind is the builder. It's like an architect has to have the idea, and then he can make the blueprint, and the house or building or construction, whatever choice you're producing, can then manifest into physical form. And it's as simple as that in our lives, but people don't seem to want to always take responsibility for their thoughts. And that's what produces our lives. And as we change our thinking, our lives do change. And as we start to be a little smarter at catching ourselves in those things that we say, oh, I didn't want to do it that way, I'm going to try something different and see if I get different results, that is when we can really change the vibrations and the energy. In fact, it's really all about cause and effect. It's not a big mystery. There was a lady in an Edgar Casey program years ago, and she used to talk about the mystery of all of this and how churches said you were supposed to stay in the mystery of it. And I want you to know that the truth will set you free, and it doesn't have to be a mystery. The only reason it was a mystery is they didn't want you to know the truth. So tonight is another way of approaching it from a factual, effective way of changing your lives and making it your lives more productive and happy, because who you are is what you manifest around yourself. And as you start to love yourself more, as you start to respond in love for yourself and others more, as you take responsibility in your life instead of playing victim. You know, you can give up that game of volunteering to be a victim anytime you choose. There is so many ways to handle things in more prosperous, productive ways. Giving up procrastination is a very big one. In fact, a wonderful way to change your energy and release some of that negative energy that's keeping you down from moving up and growing into higher energy and vibrations is to clear away all your unfinished business and finish it. Identify what is still not being completed, what in your life still has to be fixed. If you have something broken, something needs repaired or mended, if something is not working right, it should be in good getting my tongue tangled here. It should be in good working condition if you use it or not. This is important. That energy has to be flowing in your life to be productive and for you to manifest and benefit from it. So, just as an example, Marilyn doesn't need her sewing machine as much as she used to, but it was hung up and tangling in the thread in the bobbin area, and it needed repaired to stop doing that. And she has benefited at times for mending. It was now available to use, but that needed to be repaired if she was to use it or not, because it was something in the house that wasn't functioning and it needed to function. Your house needs to be in repair, and that is very important to stay current in all parts of your living. So it's important to say, you might take a list of the household things that are needing to be spruced up, fixed, corrected, and repaired in a way that they work again like they were always supposed to, even if you're not planning to use it. If you don't need it, if it's something you're going to get rid of, then dispose of it. Don't let the energy of unfixed appliances pull your energy from who you truly are. Your bodies are not designed to grow old. That's another mindset, but you have such things going on in your life that drain energy from you, and that's when you start to look more elderly, and like you're progressing in age. If you read the Master's books, you'll discover some of them were 500, 700 years old and looked like they were just young teeny boppers. I mean, they looked very beautiful and they looked very young and wonderfully youthful. And it was not because they were of age in that youth. It was they did not drain their energy of what was truly who they were and let it dispense into areas that were taking away from their wonderful bodies that they had. So it really does bear a lot to do on knowing that the fountain of youth is inside of you and to bolster and nurture that in every way you can. And in looking at that energy of third dimension, which is what we got caught up in, and the density of that, it's what can we do to raise our energy and release the density into the light and into higher vibrations of joy, peace, comfort, tranquility, till we finally do come back all the way to merging into the oneness of God. And that is what ascension does, is gradually we release the darkness or the negativity, the fear, resentments, guilt. All those negative emotions are useless. You don't need them. They're produced there as a barometer for you to say, there's something I still need to release, because that's not who I am as a child of God. I am a happy, joyous, and free child of God, free from fear, free from guilt, free from resentments, free from shame, free from all that negativity which is society produced to control us and keep us inside the box and keep us down, buried in the third dimension density. And people in this room have opened up the box and saying, I'm not going to stay in the box. I'm going to open that lid of Pandora's box, let all that density out to the light so I can rise out of the box into higher energy of love, because that's who I am, and release all the things that I'm not. When you have words in your vocabulary such as I can't do such and such, that means then you've separated yourself again from God. So always say I can, with God, do whatever I need to do that's right in front of me, using God's power and energy to proceed forward through sometimes pretty difficult lessons. Some of the lessons you have today in your lives are the last of what's needing to be handled from your karma of hundreds of reincarnations that still is not quite resolved in a way necessary for you to move on. So what we have for you tonight is a tip to maybe help deal with some of those things, which I'll share in a minute. As you look at your thoughts and start keeping track of anything that pops up in your mind that's not productive and not positive, those negative thoughts about other people maybe that are taking what we might call rent-free space in your brain, you don't need to think about that, because it, like the unfinished appliances, it drains your energy. So to say, I choose to put God in my thinking and focus on God's love for me instead of what this other person's criticized me with, instead of what this person condemned me about, or instead of how this situation happened and I was very victimized or bullied by it. Realize that we need to replace that with focusing on God, because that's who we are inside and that's where our focus needs to be. And that is a very major lesson for some people, to take our focus off the outside of what's around us. We might call it the material world. And, you know, I hate to say this, but in some ways when I heard at 9/11, I believe it was some Muslims were saying part of the reason for the war was that Americans were too materialistically focused and they needed to be God-focused. And with that, I have to agree, is that all our thinking can take the focus off of God, and it doesn't have to be just our thinking and emotions that are separating us from God, but the words we use in our language, are they really caring to other people, supportive of other people, letting them know that we are there in a real way for them? Sometimes it's easier to keep our mouth closed because we are afraid that repercussions will come. However, I have learned the hard way is that when you're sending out love to others and you're sending it from your heart, you're actually going to have better feelings than if you didn't say anything. It has to flow. It has to move through you. The energy has to come from your heart to someone else, and then they can pass it on to another person. And it might just be a smile. That's energy too, and can really brighten not only other people's lives, it gets passed on, and we have a much brighter life for all of us. So whatever you feel uncomfortable when speaking up and supporting or validating or saying, good show, I think you did a great job on that, or I think that you're doing a super job, that's, some people might call it validation, some people might call it nurturing. Most of us in one time or another didn't get that, and it's important that we all receive support. And what it truly is, and maybe you hadn't thought of it this way, it truly is God manifesting through you to that other person, and God's telling them what a great job they've done, or how well they're liked or cared for, or how good what they had to say was, or something that is positive. It's not really you saying it, it's God's message flowing through you, and that's what Ascension's about, is God manifesting around all of us. And we can't keep our mouths closed if that's going to happen. The energy is stuck inside of us. It needs to be expressed. God manifested is what we're talking about. And as we clean out the inside of the darkness, the separation from God that we've felt, and move closer to God, which is our song tonight, we are manifesting God through us. That's ascension. We don't want to manifest the pains anymore. And I know some of us have gone through some various deep pains throughout various parts of our lives. And as we learn to love ourselves, because God already loved us, it's just a matter of accepting that love. And sometimes that's a little scary and difficult to accept all in one big gulp, but little by little, step by step, as you get more of your love of God growing inside of you, it's easier to send it out to others. That's what's going to make 1,000 years of peace really wonderful, to live in that wonderful loving energy that's moving around through all of us and connecting us all in oneness. That's where it has to happen. Not only through your words, but through your emotions. And as you feel good about yourself, you cannot be sick. As you feel good about yourself, you will be that person that they want in their presence. You will attract more loving situations. As you have the better, healthier emotions, you will find yourself a happier person waking up in the morning saying, oh, what a glorious day. I wonder what gifts God has for me today. So instead of waking up, and so often people that aren't on the path of growing spiritually wake up with such depression, and they go for pills from the doctor, which actually stops the spiritual growth, sadly. Drugs and negative behaviors, all kinds of things can actually stop God manifesting through us. And what a change and what a delight it is when that shift happens for people, and they can wake up into the glory of God's grace every morning, rather than the old ways of, oh, another day I have to go through, kind of feelings. And some of us had those at various times. And sometimes we have to persevere even when it isn't the most joyous experiences, but that's important to get to the other side of them. And to know when we get to the other side of them that God was always with us going through it, and we can see the best in the situation, what the gift is at the end of the journey. So not only emotionally can we send out support and care to others by just being better people ourselves from the inside out, but spiritually our growth will show, and it says in the Bible, you will know them by their fruits. And your lives will start to manifest in ways you would not believe. Things will start happening. Little things that you wouldn't expect and maybe aren't really all that big and wonderful, but just so helpful. Marilyn came home and her car was just filthy dirty sitting outside, which it doesn't usually do, and collecting all kinds of leaves and dust and dirt. And she didn't really want to drive a dirty car. And as she drove that day to go where she needed to, lo and behold, there was a car wash right on the corner, right in front of her. All she had to do was pull in. And they took care of cleaning it all up. And she didn't have to go drive off to a special car wash or take extra time out of her day to make sure the car got cleaned the next day. It just was right there for her. And those little things can sometimes make our day much more light and happy and more productive and efficient, and it just brightened her day to know that God had placed that car wash there and just make her day that much easier. And those little things can be just as much a blessing and a miracle as people having medical conditions resolved and eliminated, because when you're feeling good, these good things are going to happen. You can't feel good or feel God in your life and have illness. You can't feel God in your life and have difficulties. People respond differently when you have that inner light that's shining and emanating from you, and that warm, wonderful acceptance of what's out there and enjoying every minute of every day. And so growing into ascension is not really so many people sometimes say, well, I don't understand it. I don't know if I want to go into ascension. And not everybody will be going into ascension if they still have karma to resolve in third dimension, and they still have fear and guilt and shame and right and wrong and self-righteousness, and they come from their ego, and they still seem to think they have to have all the answers. And those people will still need to learn those lessons, that that's not bringing them closer to God. And if they choose to not grow out of those mindsets, that's their choice. And a lot of people have come into the earth at different times with different lessons, and so not everybody is moving on. But life is a choice, and the people in this room have basically made that choice. And ascension is really a very simple process of just moving from the negative to the positive. It doesn't have to be a mystery. It doesn't have to be that you have to, some churches you have to pay money to get out of purgatory. And so I'm not trying to be derogatory, but it doesn't have to be all this falderall so often put around moving into higher places to be with God. It is really just enjoying your life and taking over being yourself, your natural, beautiful self of a child of God that you truly are. And just like a snake, shedding off all those parts that aren't you anymore. And it's a glorious trip, and it's so rewarding inside, and you all know that the results are wonderful. I just wanted to explain how simple it can truly be. So often our brains get caught up in the complexities of all these things. So now I would like to give you the tool that I wanted to share with you tonight. And as you go through your day or take time out to meditate, if you have a piece of paper and pencil, this might even be helpful to write down those negative things that pop up as the day goes along, or as you think and reflect on at night maybe of what happened that day, and jot them down. And I want you to take this white eraser of grace. Now, you've seen the commercial on television of Mr. Clean's white sponge eraser, and how it cleans away the dark spots and the dirt and what you don't want in the kitchen. And we're going to transform that eraser into a white eraser of grace. And you can apply that eraser to all those things that are not being productive in helping you to manifest the fruits of the Spirit. And you can apply in meditation that white eraser to erase the mindset that started those particular ways of trying to protect yourself or keep yourself safe, or to distance yourself from somebody who wasn't safe at the time because you didn't have skills to handle it differently. You didn't know how to pray for them so that it would be safe. So take this magic eraser of grace, and as you're erasing each of those things each day that have caused a difficulty for you, and you know it's not who you truly are or want to be, and erase it away with your magic white eraser so the light can replace the darkness. And remember that it's an eraser, so it's an eraser with grace will refill the void of what you erased. And let that grace replace what you don't want anymore. And as your list becomes smaller and smaller over time, you will notice a new Nancy emerging, a new Mac growing further. And Marilyn practices this kind of thing with a little different twist to it. It's very simply, you can just ask God to remove those things. But I kind of like the idea of a magic white eraser of grace, so the grace can take its place. And whenever you do release anything, to replace it with God's love and grace will fill you, so the fruits of the Spirit can now become who you truly are on the inside. And it won't, all of a sudden you'll find yourself doing things, little nice things for others that you might not have done before, or you'll be feeling a little more compassion towards somebody you might not have felt compassion for. Or you might say, this is the best thing for me, even though that other person might not like it. I'm going to stand up for myself and do what's the right thing for me. And you'll feel much more self-respect. There was an experience recently where Marilyn had to speak up in a situation that was going amiss in a group of people. And she was the person in charge of that group, and she didn't really want to be rude. She didn't want to offend anybody. She didn't really want to have to speak up and say anything. But somehow she knew the right thing to do was just to kindly say, we appreciate your sharing, and now we have other people that have to have the time to share too, and it's their turns, and thank you for spending, your sharing experiences with us, and we're moving on. And the person who was stopped from talking wasn't too happy at the time, and she expected repercussions from that. And there were some minor things. The person started to come towards her with a fist and attack her, but people stopped that. And what she discovered in the long run over the whole situation, even though she feared later that there might be retaliation for her speaking up and stopping someone from talking, when you do it in the right way, when you do it for the right reasons, and when you're taking care of, this case, a situation that needed to be corrected for a healthy reason, not because of being rude or manipulating or controlling the meeting, but because it needed a direction where it would be going in a better fashion, there was absolutely no repercussion. In fact, over time, she became stronger to realize that when you stand up for yourself, you get stronger and more able to take care of yourself in better ways over time. The strength inside of her has grown to be able to stand and take a firm stand for what she believes is right and let the chips fall where they may. And in this case, she discovered there's not going to be difficulty afterwards if it's done with the right motivation, if it's done for the right reasons. And the other people will learn from that experience of how to better handle their part. So you see, we can all learn how to stand up for ourselves whenever the situation occurs. And this is an important part of ascension. We don't become victims by others taking over when it's inappropriate. We don't bully them even though they're doing that. We just handle it as gracefully as we can. And taking care of being assertive is what you are really trying to achieve in your lives. That's when the love can flow through to others If you're a victim, the energy cannot move out of you. If you're a bully, you're sending so much, it's obtrusive and hurtful. So you want to be centered in that loving flow of energy as you move forward closer to God. And you really do move up in higher consciousness with each of these more loving ways of handling your life. So we want to reiterate again, it's not a mystery. We're really just returning to the people we were originally as children of God before this deeper density energy got us caught up and we couldn't get out of it. And Jesus did come to show us the way, and he wanted to share something about that tonight. So I want you to know what wonderful people you are on the path of growing. And maybe you didn't call it ascension before, but spiritual growth is ascension. And to be able to know that God has always been with you, you've never been abandoned, you've never been rejected, you've never been in a place where God couldn't help you if you didn't ask for help. So we don't have to do it alone. And isn't that a glorious feeling that God and you can do it together? And that's what Jesus meant when he said that the Father is within me and I am in the Father and the Father is in me and the Father doeth the work. So God is within you, you are within God, and together the work can be accomplished because you're not doing it alone. It's God's energy flowing through you. You're just physically making it handle situations in the material world. You're guiding the energy into productive places for yourself and others. And God is manifesting. And that's what we're all about, is letting the God energy within you flow out to yourself, to fill yourself from head to toe with God's love. I want you to feel that right now, because as you're meditating, you can practice feeling from head to toe God's love and the energy moving inside of you. Just let that happen right now. And the more you let that feeling become who you are, maybe it was just a minute today, and maybe it's 2 minutes tomorrow, and maybe it's 5 minutes next time when you're meditating, and maybe as the time progresses, more and more of you will be becoming filled with the presence of God. And you've then moved into the now, where the power of God can work through you, and you have transformed your life. You have ascended out of the past, out of the darkness, out of the deeper density, into the light. And congratulations for coming and learning about these things. Ascension is not a mystery, I want to let people know. It's really very simple, but it takes courageous people. And you people are courageous. I want to commend you. Do we have any questions?
I have several, John.
Yes.
And first a comment of while you were quiet and we were able to feel God moving within us. That was almost the identical feeling I have when I'm doing healing work. And so I've kind of come to the realization that healing is just God loves pathing from one to another. Is that essentially it?
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. You're right on, Red Rider. That's exactly, with just different terms, using God's wonderful love and passing it on so that they can feel it and get healed. Whenever we're feeling good, we are going to get well. And that's what, when you're feeling good, you're passing it on to somebody else to feel good, and that's not the mystery, but that's the energy that will heal. Love heals. You're right on.
You talked quite a bit about manifesting the fruits of the Spirit. And there's one that always bothers me, and it's the one about long suffering. Yet I don't look forward to suffering for a long period of time. Can you explain what's meant by long suffering? I sometimes equate long suffering with exercising patience.
That's one way to look at it. Another way to be persevering through difficulties. You can persevere with an attitude without suffering. You can persevere and say, this is what I need to do. And I'll just see the long suffering. So often the Bible was adjusted, you know that, to help people feel downtrodden, to feel less than, and that they are supposed to suffer. And so to find other words, I think you're very wise in saying, are there other ways to explain this? So yes, when you have lots of lifetimes where certain lessons are not learned in one lifetime, and you continue to keep working. We have been working on these lessons for at least 2,000 years. Look where we have come, ready to move on out of these lessons. And you have experienced hundreds of lifetimes in experiencing these lessons to get to where you are now. So you have had long suffering, and some of them might have been painful. Some of them maybe really truly were suffering times. But today, in your enlightenment, you can choose words to say, I don't need to do it from a victim point of view that's happening to me. I can do it from, I choose to make these changes because I know the results will be more to the liking and manifesting of God's energy in me. So you can rearrange words to make them work for you and not against you. Words have been definitely played with in your society. One way of doing it is what they call politically correct. How often politically correct is not always truth. It's been switcherooed, and to make somebody else have the advantage. Sometimes they call it putting a spin on words. And one of the biggest spins they put on words was selfishness. Now, that word was meant to mean self-care. So if you're taking care of yourself and somebody comes along and says, that's selfish, they're really guilting you into saying, I want you to take care of me instead of you have to just suffer and do without so I can have what you have, or you can take care of whatever responsibility I have because I'm too lazy to do it, or whatever the reasoning is that they're bullying you. And to remember that self-care is very, very important. If you don't care for yourself and the God within, who will? And other people need to learn to do that for themselves, to care for themselves, and it's very healthy. So the spin was put on that when people are called selfish, that it was bad. And it's not truly a bad word at all. Society just rearranged it to their advantage to make you not have time or energy or effort or ability to take care of yourself because, oh, well, if you did such and such, that was selfish. And that's not true. But they use it against you. So to rearrange the words to work for you, Mac, is a wonderful way of understanding. This is what Ascension's about, is to change those words from negative to a positive way to look at it. And it doesn't have to bring you down. Anything that brings you down or depresses you or that kind of thing is, again, third dimension, and you're looking for ways out of it into ascension. So if you find perseverance or you find other terms that you mentioned that will bring you into a more positive, light way to handle long experiences that need to be resolved, I commend you for identifying one of those things that you can change with your white magic marker of grace. Erase long suffering and replace it with a better positive word that you can relate with. Congratulations, that's exactly what I was trying to say tonight. You caught on.
I have more questions, but I'm sure Nancy might too.
Oh no, go right ahead.
You spoke about Jesus saying, I'm in the Father, and the Father is in me, and you said that God is within us. This God within, is this what the Christian church refers to as the Christ?
The God within is the energy of God, the love of God. And when it's manifested into physical form, it's the Christ. The energy is of like vapor or gaseous, if you're trying to describe an element of way you could relate. And when it becomes used in a solid form, maybe like water, then that's the Christed part. It's manifesting into a way of being utilized. So the energy in you, because people do not understand the scientific part, spirituality is really quantum physics, and as you get to understand the terms, Father and energy would be interchangeable. And as you have matter, you would maybe say the highest matter form would be the Christed form. So what we're doing is taking the matter and applying it in our lives, and as you say in your prayer, the highest, truest, and best, that's the Christed. And so it's taking that energy and using it for good. And that's what Ascension's about, is just staying as close to the source as possible with how it is manifested. Does that answer your question?
I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
In the beginning of the gospel that's attributed to you, it says, in the beginning there was God. God was with God, and God was God. Several questions referring to that. By the beginning, are they talking about the beginning of the third dimension? And are they also talking about two aspects of God here? God the Father and God the Creative Son?
Well, it's the same as what I was just relating a minute ago. The energy force, the oneness was there in an invisible form, and there was God. And then when God became the Word, that's the Christed part. That's the manifestation of the energy in the highest possible, closest to the source possible form. They're very, very close to the same, except one has no consciousness and one has consciousness. It's as we move into the fifth dimension, we will become closer and closer into not having consciousness, but just oneness with God. And that's going back to just God is. But as we move and progress towards that, there's stages of learning and growth that we will go through, just like moving out of the third dimension. We will learn more energy shifting to be able to continue moving closer into the oneness. I don't know if that's answering your question, but my answer a few minutes ago actually answered the same question you had this time.
I realized that when you began to answer this question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mac, do you have any other questions?
I do. In the Edgar Casey work, in the Search for God work, one of the disciplines or experiments that Casey recommended that we do is to see, I have to see if I'm remembering this right, to see the Christ in other people. And I've often wondered how you physically go about doing that. And I begin to think it might be by observing the fruits of the Spirit that they manifest.
That is one way. That is the easiest way, because it's physically in front of you and you are in a material world of 3-dimension, and it's easier to identify. I don't really like to use Marilyn all the time as examples, but I will give you one. Marilyn's mother was never one who could extend love to her. And sometimes it was very painful, and bitterness that came about, and painful experiences. And when Marilyn accepted the love in her mother's heart as being divine, and the love in her own heart as being divine, and she connected on a heart-to-heart level with her mother, the painful parts that had happened as far as how she was treated and growing up dissolved and left. It was like they were petty, they were trite, they weren't important, because on a heart-to-heart basis she could see and connect and feel the love in her mother's heart, and see that in this case the fruits of the Spirit could not be manifested into her life because of the fearful prison she was encased in. Inside that prison was a loving heart, but she was encased in fear. So you can still see the Christ in others when they're sick, or people that might have done horrendous deeds that are in prison or jailed for various reasons, people that are very irate, homicidal, whatever is the problem with a person. It's easier to see it on a 3rd-dimensional level, where they're a wonderful philanthropist and they do great deeds of Mother Teresa type of experiences, and you can see their fruits of their Spirit. It's so simple in those cases because they're walking God and expressing it through every part of their nature. But we are all walking gods, and we all have that in our divine heart. That spark of the God that is divine is in all of us. And to walk and look past what's stopping it from manifesting in lives of others, and connecting a heart to heart, that's what will happen with our 5th dimension. The walls of the fear will come down, and those people will be able to actually manifest and produce that love, and let the fear be dissolved by the love of God. And you are doing that in the process of your ascension. You are dissolving your fears, and more love is replacing that space. So as you do that, the fruits become more obvious. For some people, it's very obvious. For some people, like Marilyn's mother, it was very difficult for her to realize for many, many years that her mother loved her. She just had no clue and no tool to be able to express God's love to her in a physical way. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Edgar Casey used the expression, open your heart to something, a person, but he used that expression thousands of times in his readings. So I gather it's extremely important that we learn to open our heart to each other and to open our heart to God.
That's exactly what we are trying to accomplish, because then your energy merges with that other person's whose heart is open. And as all our energies merge together, ultimately we will all be one again, and the physical will, at that point, will have been gone for quite some time, but our energies will more and more become back to the oneness that we started from.
I have learned that if you can make that heart-to-heart connection with another person, that you can exchange information through that channel.
Mm-hmm.
And truth will flow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's exactly right. Well, we'll ask Nancy what her questions are this evening.
Well, I guess I could ask about, I have a meditation place that I go to, and it's on a church pew, and lately I've been having a vortex come down, and that's where I am working on healing, or putting energy into other people. I don't know if there's an explanation of how I ended up in that meditation place.
Well, because you were ready for it.
And my healing, that's what I seem to be the most interested in. And with God, then they say that God is a part of you, and so by having love, I have always given people bouquets of flowers in my mind, and that's how I share my love with people. I am wanting to be more efficient, sending good vibrations and healing to people.
Excellent concern. Because as you grow, you will be more efficient and effective. As you become closer to God, as you drop away the third dimension, good, right, bad, good and bad, right and wrong, judgment and criticism, as you change those with your white magic eraser of grace, you will be sending more energy to them than you could before you changed that. You see, every time where you are is what you're sending out energy, and if you raise your energy, you're going to be open to more energy coming through you to them, and it's going to get better and better and better. So just keep working on yourself, and the rest will take care of itself, just exactly like you're wanting it to.
Thank you. That's very good. Candace has been very beneficial, and she was told recently that we were soul sisters, or we were identical twins in a Persian lifetime. And she was asking me if I would ask if this is true.
Okay, give me a minute. I am seeing that it is true. I am seeing in this Persian life that you were both Persian dancers in a harem for a king. Well, it wouldn't be maybe they were called kings in Persia. I see you in these costumes, and you have this huge head gear around you, round and decorated with gold and turquoise. It's just beautiful. And you had these costumes of sheer material that were filmy and gorgeous, and with the wind it was just flowing and beautiful. And you performed these elegant dances in the court when they would have special festivals and dinners for important people, and you were part of the entertainment. You weren't part of the conclave, but the harem where you were there for entertaining at dinner times and other dancing festival situations, and your costumes were just magnificent.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very interesting.
You were very graceful. Your hands and the way you moved to the music, you were both very graceful, and you were well respected for your ability to move so fluidly. It was like you were love in motion. The beauty and grace that you bestowed in that lifetime was very inspiring to those that watched.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions do you have tonight?
Well, it's the eraser, and I seem to be in a situation with my husband, and we seem to be very strong-willed and very strongly going left and very strongly going right.
Well, that can be confusing if you let it be that way. It is not of our society and culture to allow people to be themselves. And the more that you can do that, the more you'll end up coming back together, but with diversity, which is actually a strength. When a person is allowed to go their path with congratulations, if this is what you need to do, they are allowed to be themselves. It's like the story of the butterfly that lands on the shoulder, and you want to keep it because it's so beautiful. But you tell the butterfly that it can fly off, and if it returns, you know that it was meant to come back and be there for you. And the butterfly is allowed to go off and flutter away, and if it was meant to be, it will return. And that's what lives need to be like. Our society at the present time has so many chains in couples and marriage relationships that have been definitely put there for control of units. Churches can control families, and it's easier to control a family than individual people. And so marriage was not of the church. I mean, not of spirituality, it was of the church. In the spirit world, there are no marriages. Everyone is an individual. And learning to be in that relationship because you choose to be there, not because you took vows, you know, till death do we part, or through sickness and sin. And I'm not, sickness and health, I'm not against saying that you shouldn't be committed to people and be there for them. But sometimes people feel strangled in that, and definitely stuck in those situations when it's not always healthy for them to be there. And people need to grow. And in a relationship, people grow at different times. One person might have a growth spurt, and then the other person will grow at a different way, a different direction, as you're describing. As a result of the other person growing, it might be in response of how they handle that. It might be threatening. It might not feel comfortable with someone growing a different direction. But to allow that to happen is one of the most beautiful, loving things you can do. That's letting the butterfly fly away and letting them find themselves and allowing them to have their experience. Life is about experience. That's the only way you can change feelings, is through experience. You can't read it in a book. You have to do it. And the doing, when they come out on the other end, could bring that butterfly back or maybe not return. And that can be scary if you have abandonment issues. If you are not realizing that God never abandoned you, you are being taken care of no matter who is around you, coming or going, that you are always being there with God's love and all your angels and guides around you. In fact, Nancy, you have an entourage around you, and you know that. And they're there to make sure you're doing what you need to do and to allow, hopefully, other people to do the same. And give them your love and grace while they find their ways. One of the best things you can do is to send love to the other person of their health, happiness, and prosperity, well-being. And as you're sending out love to that other person in prayer, you're supporting them in a way that is the most healthy you can do, and the results, that butterfly will come back in a way that you will not ever have imagined. But to send them off emotionally, if not physically, but emotionally with your loving blessings to find their own life, who they are, is a great gift that you can give anybody. And it's harder to do in a relationship of marriage. Because we get so caught up with intermeshing with them for our security and safety and financial well-being, and it's difficult sometimes in marriages to allow that. If it's possible, the blessings can be great. I heard one person talking one time, and his comment was, "My wife has changed 5 distinct times through our marriage." And he was still around, you know, he was observing it and seeing how as she was growing. Basically what happens, Nancy, is this person finally gets the chance to grow up. They didn't grow up. And he watched her grow through these different stages of growing up. And it became a beautiful relationship that he allowed her to do that. And they had more love for each other and more realness in their life than they ever had, because each was free to be themselves and go through the stages necessary. There's a beautiful song in the stage play, The Unsinkable Molly Brown. Maybe you know the song, I'll never say no to you, no matter whatever you say or do. You can go or come or whatever is the thing that needs to be done, but he would never say no. And this is what society doesn't give us. Society is always saying, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, 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 no. And it keeps us in that little box, afraid to grow. But every time you give somebody permission to be able to grow, that makes you grow too. You're going to benefit, not only will he. Does that give a little satisfaction
Yes,
to it?
it does, yes.
Okay.
John,
Yes.
Marilyn's been in trance for a little over an hour.
Ooh.
Could you check with Martha and see if she's all right, or whether she should end?
All right, thank you. We'll see what Martha says. Oh, will you give her, she needs to let Ariel do her blessing, and Jesus had a few words, and then we'll end. So give her a few more minutes.
Thank you.
All right, so as John, I would like to say good evening. I hope this has been a prosperous one for you and been informative. I hope that you have grown and found that the magic white eraser of grace can help you in your ascension. I am really about ascension and like to do anything I can to help people remove the negative. As they say in the song, accentuate the positive, remove the negative, and don't miss with Mr. In between. So just accentuate your positives and move on into ascension. And I wish you all well and good evening.
God bless
Thank
you.
you, John.
Thank you so much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Is this,
I am Ariel, and I wanted to give you people a little bit of a blessing tonight that will be so helpful for your ascension and answer and maybe dissolve some of the concerns into love tonight. So just relax for a moment, and I want you to think of the negative thing that was most harmful in your very farthest memory of youth or childhood or being a baby, toddler, and think of that for a minute. Bring it to mind of what the painful situation was. And I am now going to pour, it's like an icing of love over it to dissolve the pain. Love heals. And I want you to feel the loving, and maybe think of it as an icing coating you. And as it's coating you, I want you to take some and lick your fingers or whatever, eat some of this icing and let it fill the inside of you also. So the love is dissolving that pain not only outside of you but inside of you. And just let that icing take away the pain. And now we're going to move into when you were in school age, grade school age, and something very painful that comes to your mind that never really went away. An unkind comment or a way you were treated or somebody was not very nice to you. Something happened that was painful. And think of that icing and let it flow over your head and down your body. And eat some of it and let that icing, loving icing, go inside, and it's dissolving the pain on the outside and the inside. And move into high school. Something happened that still bothers you on occasion. It'll pop up when you least expect it. Somebody said something and you'll say, oh, I thought I was over that. And let the icing of love flow over you, all around you, and cover you from head to toe. And enjoy some of it. And maybe you have a spoon to scoop some of that icing and just have a really good swallow of it, and let that icing of love inside dissolve just like the outside's dissolving, and that crystals of light are happening to release the darkness of the pain. And as you left high school and you were in your early ages of being a young adult, and something happened that was extremely painful. Maybe someone left your life that you loved and cared for. Maybe somebody hurt you in a way that you never thought you'd overcome. I want you to let that icing of love flow over you, and let that icing, with a spoonful or however you want to lick your fingers, whatever, enjoy the icing inside so that it can dissolve on the inside and the outside. And that icing is the only thing that's left, is the love. And in your adult years, as you matured, there were some painful experiences. And there you are, an adult, but there was still some very deep gut pain of death in your life. Someone died, somebody left, somebody was unkind, somebody just was brutal in some way or another. Somebody maybe uncaringly just did something that really upset you and they weren't even trying to. And let that icing just flow over you in that pain. And eat some of the icing of love so it's inside, coating you inside and dissolving that pain inside as well as the outside is dissolving. And as you've grown into your more mature years of later life, there still might have been something that you thought, well, I'll just get over that. And you've discovered there's really maybe some anger left about it that you haven't really wanted to deal with. Maybe something happened that you were really just trying to forget and say it wasn't really important. I want you to know you can't stuff your feelings. It's got to be said and spoken and dissolved. So think of whatever that was and let the icing of love just dissolve it with love, and eat some inside as it's dissolving the inside, and you're just becoming a loving person because that anger is finally going to be gone. And now that you have healed those wounds and pains, in the place where that loving icing is, that's what is replacing the void that was left from the suffering that you had to endure for whatever reason. And as you leave tonight, I want you to know those painful places are now replaced with God's love and grace. That the inner parts of you now have more love and grace in your life to be manifested for yourself and for others. Your cup runneth over with love of God, being the God inside that you are, and letting that manifest to others. And the God consciousness is a choice to let you express it in ways that maybe you couldn't before, as you grow closer and closer into God's oneness and your better ascension path is opening up even more. I wish you well, people, and love you very much, and hope that this healing has made a profound difference in your growth tonight, and have a very lovely evening. Good night.
God
Good night,
bless you.
Aaron.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, I am Sananda,
Good evening, Sananda.
Good evening.
and I just would like to remind people that I am your brother. So often people say elder brother. I want you to see me as one of you. I do not want to be put on a pedestal, but I do want you to know that tonight you heard more truth and more love and light for your life, and that I did come to be a way shower and a pattern that if I could change that negativity in my life from the ego, which meant that I was edging God out, as some people put it, but it's also the darkness, and could move into the light that was truly in me and is the Father within me, that you also can do that too. If I can do it, I just came to show you that you could. And tonight you heard more truth about how you can become the God within. And I hope that you understand that that truth is life. The light that it will bring into your life creates life. And the more light you have in your life, the more life-giving ways you can help yourself and others. And you too are on the path of becoming Christed, if you haven't already accomplished that. And I want you to know this is not just a fanciful little game, but you truly are a Christ. As you release those things, as John was helping you tonight with, more of your Christedness will show in your life. And eventually, you too will find that at some time, something will be so painful it'll feel like you were crucified. And now that's when you know that you have graduated and you have moved into ascension, that your spirit has risen above the pains of the ego in the third dimension into life eternal. That is who you truly are. You already are eternal spirit. You are just growing back into it. And it's only that you have to believe it and claim it. And of course, do the work that's necessary for your each individual growth, that's necessary for your own soul to be healed. I'm here to tell you how much you are loved, that each one of you is very special to me. Nancy, you are my child with whom I am well pleased. You are a very lovely lady. Please claim all the goodness that is rightfully yours and is your inheritance and birthright.
Thank you.
And Mac, you are my very special child. I am so pleased with all the work you do in growing and helping and being there in so many ways for others. And you are truly a good example of what becoming a Christ is about. I want to commend you that you have turned into that eternal spirit. Congratulations.
Thank you, Son.
And I wish to tell you how much you are loved, and you may call on me at any time. I am always with you, and I am always ready to help you. And please know that you are loved for eternity, because that's who you truly are. May God be with you forever. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I just want to say that we had a heavy-duty evening, but I hope that everybody benefited. I think you did. It was a real growing experience, and only people that show up here are really wanting to do the growth work. And I think that is just to be applauded and applauded and applauded. So keep coming back, and we'll just keep growing and having a great time doing it. Toodaloo!
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.
God bless.